Why is the sharpest mind often the most alone? This is not a simple social failing, but a philosophical inevitability. True intelligence brings a clarity of vision that sees beyond the comforting illusions that bind society together. It perceives the quiet desperation, the trivial pursuits, and the hollow noise of the crowd. In this stark light, solitude ceases to be a punishment and becomes the only sane refuge from an unbearable vulgarity. The chasm between the intelligent individual and society is not bridged by mere effort, for its roots lie in the very nature of thought itself. Common life is a shared dream, a comfortable delusion maintained by unspoken agreement. The intelligent mind, however, awakens to the dream's emptiness. It finds the conversations shallow, the ambitions vain, and the company draining. Thus, a quiet isolation becomes the necessary cost of seeing the world as it truly is, a sanctuary for a spirit that can find no equal. Consider the marketplace of human interaction. It is a cacophony of wants, a desperate exchange not of goods but of validations. Here, in this teeming square, the currency is triviality, and the price of admission is the suspension of one's finer perceptions. Men and women gather not to elevate one another through a communion of profound thought, but to bask in the shared warmth of their own insignificance. They speak of the weather, of the fleeting scandals of the day, of the acquisition of possessions that will soon lose their luster. This is not communication. It is a collective murmur, a ritual to ward off the chilling silence that would otherwise reveal the emptiness of their pursuits. It is a shared dream from which they dare not awaken, for the waking world is cold and demands a strength they do not possess. To them, this noise is life itself, vibrant, social, and real. But to the individual who possesses a greater degree of intelligence and sensitivity, this same scene is a spectacle of profound vulgarity. The intelligent mind enters this marketplace and is immediately assaulted not by the content of the conversations, for there is none, but by their jarring superficiality. It is like possessing perfect pitch and being forced to listen to an orchestra that is perpetually, gratingly out of tune. Every laugh seems a decibel too loud, every smile a fraction too strained, every expression of concern a performance rehearsed too many times. The mind that is accustomed to plumbing the depths of a subject, to turning it over and examining its every facet, finds nothing to grasp in this endless stream of pleasantries and gossip. It is a diet of air, and the soul starves for substance. The very mechanisms of social bonding, the light jest, the shared complaint, the unspoken agreement to avoid anything of genuine weight, become a source of immense fatigue. For to participate is to engage in a constant act of self-betrayal, to feign an interest one does not feel, to nod in agreement with platitudes one knows to be false, and to laugh at jests that strike no chord of genuine amusement within. This necessity to pretend, to lower one's own cognitive faculties to the level of the herd, is the most corrosive tax levied by society upon the exceptional individual. It is a deliberate dulling of one's own sharpest edge. The mind is a fine instrument, and like a blade, it is owned by use against resistant material. But the common social world offers no such resistance. It is a formless, yielding mass. To think deeply in such a context is to risk cutting oneself on the ignorance of others, or worse, to be met with blank, uncomprehending stares that transform a nascent insight into an object of ridicule. Therefore, the intelligent individual learns to sheath their intellect. They learn to bite back the original thought, to swallow the penetrating observation, and to offer instead the bland, pre-digested morsels that the crowd expects. This act is not merely tedious, it is a slow spiritual suicide. It is the conscious agreement to become less than one is, to trade the lonely clarity of one's own mind for the warm, suffocating fog of collective approval. The vulgarity, then, is not merely in the lack of intellectual rigor, but in the active, unspoken hostility towards it. The herd possesses a deep, instinctual suspicion of that which it cannot understand. A novel idea is not greeted with curiosity, but with defensiveness. A penetrating question is not seen as an invitation to explore, but as a challenge to the fragile foundations upon which every conventional life is built. The crowd does not wish to be awakened from its dream. It desires only the comfort of its own familiar illusions. The belief in lasting happiness found in external things, the faith in the significance of its daily strivings, the conviction that its noise is a substitute for meaning. The presence of a truly intelligent person, one who sees through these illusions with passive clarity, acts as a silent reproach. Without a word being spoken, their mere existence is a testament to a different way of being, and this testament is intolerable. Thus, the isolation of the intelligent is not always self-imposed out of mere preference. It is often the inevitable result of being gently, but firmly, pushed to the periphery by a community that finds their lucidity unsettling. Consequently, the withdrawal from this vulgar spectacle ceases to be a matter of misanthropic choice and reveals itself as an act of intellectual and spiritual self-preservation. To remain in the constant company of the herd is to subject one's inner world to a relentless barrage of mediocrity. It is to allow the unique timbre of one's own thoughts to be drowned out by the monotonous drone of the commonplace. Solitude, therefore, is not emptiness. It is the fertile ground from which original thought can spring, the quiet chamber where the mind can finally speak in its own true voice, without the need for translation or compromise. It is the sanctuary where one can sharpen the blade of the intellect on the hard stone of truth, rather than letting it grow blunt from contact with the soft, unresisting pulp of conventional opinion. The intelligent individual retreats not because they hate humanity, but because they value the integrity of their own consciousness too highly to see it dissipated in the futile effort to bridge an unbridgeable gap. They choose the company of great minds found in books, or the more demanding companionship of their own untrammeled thoughts, over the wearying obligation to pretend that the noise of the marketplace is a symphony. To see the world with a penetrating clarity is to inherit a solitude that the common man cannot fathom. This isolation is not born from misanthropy, but is the direct and inevitable consequence of a vision that pierces through the comforting veils obscuring reality for the multitude. Where others perceive purpose, progress, and a landscape dotted with genuine pleasures, the clear-sighted individual perceives the fundamental machinery of existence. A blind, striving will that animates all life, a ceaseless push against suffering, whose ultimate object is nothing but the temporary alleviation of that very suffering. This vision is a solitary weight, a knowledge that cannot be unknown, and it forever separates the bearer from those who navigate life by the dim, forgiving light of illusion. The majority live in a state of blessed myopia, mistaking their limited focus for sunlight, their immediate gratifications for lasting happiness, and their conventional goals for profound meaning. They are like passengers on a ship, engrossed in their games and conversations, comfortably unaware of the fathomless, turbulent depths of the ocean through which they travel. The clear-sighted individual is the one who has looked over the rail and seen the abyss returning to the trivialities of the deck is an act of profound and exhausting dissimulation. This chasm in perception manifests in every facet of human interaction. The ambitions that drive the crowd, the pursuit of wealth, status, and social acclaim, reveal themselves to the penetrating gaze as elaborate phantoms. The clear-sighted understand that wealth is but a larger margin against want, not a path to positive happiness. That status is a precarious agreement among fools, and that social acclaim is the applause of those whose judgment one must, by necessity, hold in contempt. To witness the fervor with which men chase these hollow prizes is to watch a grand and tragicomic play where the actors have forgotten they are on a stage. One cannot genuinely participate in a race whose finish line one knows to be illusory. To express this insight, however, is to commit the ultimate social sin. It is to shatter the shared dream, to turn on the lights in a theater where everyone else is content to watch the shadows on the wall. The crowd does not thank you for this revelation. It recoils. It shuns the bearer of a sharper, colder light, for that light exposes the fragility of the foundations upon which they have built their lives. Their blissful ignorance is a delicate ecosystem, and the presence of a conscious, discerning mind is a destructive force within it. Thus, the burden is twofold. It is the internal weight of a disenchanted worldview, and the external pressure of a society that demands cheerful participation in its own delusions. The clear-sighted are condemned to a life of silent observation, or if they speak, to being misunderstood and labeled melancholic, arrogant, or cynical. Their solitude is compounded by the realization that their truth is not a gift they can give, but a poison they must withhold. Every social gathering becomes a performance, a careful editing of one's own perceptions to avoid causing offense or inviting bewilderment. This constant self-censorship is a form of intellectual loneliness far more profound than mere physical isolation. It is to be a ghost at the feast, present in body but absent in spirit, surrounded by the laughter and clamor of those who are fully invested in a reality you know to be fleeting and insubstantial. Consequently, withdrawal becomes the only honorable and psychologically sustainable response. It is not a retreat born of weakness, but a strategic consolidation of one's own resources. In the quiet of solitude, the burden of clear-sightedness transforms from a social handicap into a source of grim strength. The energy that would be wasted in the pretense of social engagement is redirected inward, toward the cultivation of one's own intellect and the contemplation of truths that, while somber, are at least authentic. The company of great thinkers through literature and philosophy becomes a more genuine society, a republic of minds who understand the weight of this vision. This self-imposed exile is the price of maintaining intellectual integrity. It is the acknowledgement that to see the world as it is, with all its inherent lack of purpose and its foundation of striving and suffering, is to forfeit the right to the easy camaraderies of those who see it as they wish it to be. The clear-sighted individual chooses the stark, solid ground of a lonely truth over the warm, shifting sands of a shared illusion, understanding that this choice is the very definition of their existence, a solitary vigil in the face of the sublime and terrible nature of things. Thus, isolation is not the failure of the intelligent individual, but the logical conclusion of a mind too clear-sighted to partake in the collective dream. It is the dignified withdrawal from a marketplace of vulgarities, and the preservation of one's inner light against the fog of common opinion. In the end, this solitude is the necessary sanctuary for a consciousness that perceives the world as it truly is, a quiet victory of truth over the clamor of illusion.